Claudia here from Create with Claudia. I'm so glad you joined me today. I am really excited about today's video. This is something new for me. I'm making a bandana quilt. I've never made one before, so I'm excited to show you how. This is going to be a lap quilt, and you probably saw a picture at the beginning, and I'll show you all the steps to make it. This is an example of one of the bandanas I'll be using. They're so pretty. In this one I'm using a pink, which is actually called strawberry, and then turquoise and white bandanas. Another reason I'm really excited about this video is that this is my first sponsored video. So I want to say thank you so much to burlapfabric.com for providing me with the bandanas for my project. This was a lot of fun to make, so thank you to them. They did provide the bandanas, however all of the opinions are mine. As always, I love it when I get new subscribers, so thank you so much for subscribing. If you're new to the channel or just coming back for another visit, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that button. Also, I am on social media at Create with Claudia, where I post all sorts of things on various social media outlets. So thanks so much for watching and enjoy the video. Now before we cut them, I did want to point out a couple things about the care of them. I definitely washed them beforehand. I washed them on hot, and I did put in a couple of color catchers because sometimes bandanas do bleed. I used lighter colors, so it wasn't really a problem for me, but if you're using red or whatever, I would highly recommend using a color catcher on them. And I washed them hot and dried them, and then I pressed them nicely. So that's just your care before you even cut into them. So when done, this quilt should measure 54 by 72 approximately. You know how that is. Once it's all done, it might be give or take a quarter inch or so. Hopefully that's about all you're off. And you're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout. And really the whole top is made up of bandanas. The backing is just some fabric that I had on hand, and I do use batting. And then I actually had enough bandanas left over from the ones they provided that I had enough for the binding. So that's perfect. So pretty much the entire quilt except for my backing was made of these bandanas. And the bandanas I have, they're all 22 inches square, and give or take, now I will say this, not all of them are exactly the same size. So when you're cutting, you have to be really super careful to leave as much fabric as you can, because you need a certain size square for this quilt. But my bandanas are 22 inches square, and they're 100% cotton. And another note on the bandanas, these are a nice heavier weight bandana, so I didn't feel that I needed to back them with anything. You can get like a cotton fusible interfacing and back them if you had maybe a lighter weight bandana, but for this project I didn't need to do that. It made it easier. And I used 3 different colors for the project, and the bandanas I got were all in packs of 6, so I had plenty of bandanas to use with some left over. And the following colors are what I used. For the pink, I needed 4 squares, again 22 inch bandanas. I need 4 of them in the pink color. I also used blue in this, so it's like a turquoise blue, and in this one I needed 2 bandanas for the pattern that I'm laying them out in. So if you're going to change up your colors, you're just going to have to change them accordingly. But for this one, for the blue, I needed 2 bandanas. And lastly, and these are already cut, I like to do a little pre-work before I make my videos. In the white bandana, I needed all 6 of them, all 6 that were in the pack. So in the white I used 6 bandanas, blue I used 2, and in the pink I used 4. So now I'm going to show you how to cut down your bandana, because we don't use it like this. We're going to cut it into 4 squares, and each square is going to be 10 1/8 inch square. You're going to cut that. You're going to need that because we're making half square triangles for this quilt. So let me get started on that. You will need some bigger rulers. So for this, you are going to want to have a long ruler, because you want to have a nice long one that you can cut this whole edge off. You want to cut these little, I don't know if you know bandanas. Let me just see if I can show you. I can show you on this blue one. They have a very sort of a surged edge there. Hopefully you can see it. It's very, very narrow. I mean, it's less than 1/8 of an inch, but you want to get rid of that. You don't want to sew that or have that in your quilt, or you're going to have a lot of bulk. So we're going to get rid of 2 sides to begin with, and then we'll get rid of the other ones as well. So I have this 24-inch ruler, which is ideal for this. Actually, it's 24 and a half, excuse me. And we're just going to line it up on one side, right up against that little edge I showed you, that little serged edge, and cut it away. And you might need to manipulate it a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight at this point. The nice thing is I'm giving you a little bit of room for your half square triangles. You're going to trim them down and square them up once they're sewn together to make your half square triangles. But we want to get that as much as fabric as we can out of this. And then you're going to take your rotary cutter and just cut off this edge, this little sewn edge. And there you go. It's just a teeny little piece. We're just toss that. And then you're just going to flip it around and do the other side. I just like to square off the two opposite sides. And you know, if you have a better way or a different way of cutting your bandanas, go ahead and do it. But bottom line is you're going to try and get 4 squares cut 10 1/8 inch. And I'll just pull this a little bit just to get, I just want to get rid of that. All right, so now we're ready to cut our squares. And this is where you need also a nice big cutting board. And I line up one of the cut ends with one of the inch, wherever it is. And just sort of square it up there a little bit. It's, like I said, it's not going to be perfectly square. I will say the bandanas are not perfectly square if you're thinking they are. But that's okay because we have some wiggle room here. And you're going to measure over 10 1/8. And that should be right here. And I'm just going to double check it. Double check. You definitely want to double check. 10 1/8. And then you're just going to cut like so. And then you have one strip. And then we're going to finish up this strip. So line that up. And then we're going to hopefully squeak out our 10 1/8 inch, which yeah, we just have it. Good. Phew. And I will double check. I'm sort of, I like to double check everything. And we're just going to cut that, make sure it's still lined up there. So we had a fair amount to spare on this side. Some of them you don't get quite that much to spare. And then what you're going to do is you're going to flip one around. And this is where you'll see where they aren't quite even. You're going to put this, line this up with one of the ruler measures on your cutting board. And you're just going to even off one side. You should be able to get it. Like I said, it's pretty tight. You just want to even this side out. And there's, whoops, you can see a little fuzz from that serger. There you go. So there's your starting point. You're going to measure over 10 1/4. Excuse me, 10 1/8. Woo, big mistake. You can't get 10 1/4 out of each of these, unless you have bigger bandanas, of course. Alright. Then you're just going to cut that, and I did not close my rotary cutter. That's a big no-no. You don't want to hurt yourself, so always close that. Alright, so there's my first square, 10 1/8 square. I'm going to do this one really quickly. So I will line that up nice and even right here, and it's just gonna squeak out just barely. It's close, but we got it. Whew. All right, so there are my squares, and I'm going to get 2 more out of this, and when I come back I'm going to show you how we make our half square triangles. Okay, so here we are. Here are my 4 squares out of the one bandana. They're cut 10 1/8 inches, so they're ready to go, and we're going to make our half square triangles now. When all of your cutting is finished, you should have the following amounts. From white bandanas, you should have 24 squares cut 10 1/8 inches. From the turquoise blue bandanas, you should have 8 squares cut 10 1/8 inches. And from the pink, you should have 16 squares cut 10 1/8 inches. So that's what you should have before you make the half square triangles. And now we're going to make the half square triangles. If you know how to do them, go ahead and skip ahead, and then you can see what the quilt layout is. But for those of you who don't, stick around and I will show you how to do that. So for this one, you're going to be pairing up your colored bandana with a white one. So either pink or blue, depending on which one, whatever colors you're using. But you're pairing one up with the white or the background. And then in this case, I'm going to use the pink. And we're going to just pair these up together. And you want to put them right sides facing. But before we do that, you're going to take your lighter square, in this case the white, and you're going to draw, and I've already drawn it on here, so let me get my pencil, I can show you. You're going to take your ruler, I'll draw it again just so you can see, and from corner to corner you're going to draw a line, and this is the back of the bandana. And in this case it's easy, I can see it's the back of the writing, it's easy to tell. On other ones it's not as easy to tell, but it's not as hard as you think either. If you just look, you can usually see the back of a bandana is a little bit lighter, or maybe the print's a little bit fuzzier. But anyway, we're going to draw this line nice and dark. Normally I wouldn't draw it this dark, and I normally wouldn't draw it in pencil either. So hopefully you can see that line right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pair these up right sides together. So let me just see which ones this is. Yeah, let's see. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay. See, it takes sometimes a little bit. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you, and this depends a lot on the bandanas you have. I thought it would be fun to try and sort of mimic this scallop pattern when I made my half square triangles. It's a little bit fussier when you're putting the squares together. You do not have to do this. I just thought it'd be a fun little extra design element. So when I put mine together, right sides together, I make sure to match up like this little flower design to this, and then the paisley to the paisley on this side. Again, you don't have to do it, but it's sort of fun. It's a little extra thing, and it turns out really pretty. So you're going to even these out. They should both be 10 1/8, give or take. You can see where one's a little bit bigger. I didn't get quite enough out of the white, and that's okay because we are going to trim these down. So now that they're evened up, right sides together, we're going to sew. You're going to sew a 1/4 inch down this side and down both sides of this drawn line. So I'm going to take those to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew down each side, and I'll be right back and show you what they look like. Alright, so here we go. I sewed down both sides of that drawn line. Now I know you can't see it because of the white fabric, and I used white thread. So here you hopefully can see it a little bit better on the pink, and you'll see both sides. So now we're going to split this in half with the ruler and my rotary cutter. And you're going to cut on that line that we drew earlier. And there you go. There is your half square triangle. Now we still need to trim it down. And there you can sort of see that little bit of a scallop pattern. I just thought that would be a fun little design element. Like I said, that's not necessary, and especially because not all bandanas look the same. But in this case they did, so I thought it'd be fun. So I'm going to press these open, and then I'm going to show you how to trim them down. Okay, so here is my pressed half square triangle. It's all ready to go. We still need to trim it down. And we need to trim it down to 9 1/2 inches square. So for that I have this nice handy dandy square ruler that's 15 inches square. So that's plenty big enough, and it also has a diagonal line. Hopefully the light didn't just shine on that, but you can see this diagonal line, and you're going to line that diagonal line up with this diagonal line here. And you're going to get that corner. You're just going to try and take off as little as possible in this corner, because we're going to sort of even this out, and this will be our starting point to measure that 9 1/2 inches square. And that should just be about right. You got to hold it down. It's a big thing to cut, and then you're going to cut down one side, and I'm going to get rid of that, and then cut down, and you can see it just squared it up, and then you're going to rotate it. And then this is where you're going to put that 9.5 inch mark from your ruler. So you're going to find your 9.5 inch point where it meets on that diagonal line. So right here, put that right on that corner and line up this side, and the diagonal line. And then we're going to finish trimming this up to 9.5 inches square. Always a little hard when I'm filming a video because I'm coming at it from a different angle. So there we go. And you can just get rid of that. Now there's a little dog ear here. I'm just going to get rid of that. There we go. There's my 9.5 inch square. And now I'm ready to assemble this. I'm going to show you the whole layout. Once you finish all of your half square triangles, we're going to lay them out. I highly recommend you go to my website, www.createwithclaudia.com, where you can print the layout and you can print the whole pattern, and it shows you how the colors are laid out. So when I come back, you'll see it. I'll probably lay it down on my floor because I don't have a big workspace. And then we'll get ready to sew this quilt top together. Okay, so here's the layout. What do you think? I love the way it's turning out. Now, of course, I haven't sewn any of the blocks together, and you can kind of see where that secondary design is coming in with the way I joined the blocks. So if this is a little wobbly, I apologize. I don't have a big design wall, so I put this on my floor. And this is a pretty big quilt, or it's a lap size. It's not huge, but for this video, it's a little hard to get. So anyway, you can see the layout, and you can see that secondary design coming through. I'm really happy with the way this is coming together. I will now sew the individual rows together, each block together, to make one row. And once those are done, I'll go ahead and piece the rows together, and then we'll have a finished quilt top. Okay, so here is the finished top. It's all sewn together, and now I'm ready to put the batting and the backing on it and finish quilting it, and then I'll put the binding on. If you got enough bandanas, if you have enough bandanas left over, you can use the leftover bandanas, make strips out of them, and use that for the binding. Because I got 3 packs of 6, I actually have enough left over to do that. So I think I have enough to do all blue, but we'll see when I come back. So again, apologies for the wobbly video. I am working on some space issues, and this is the best I can do right now. So before I show you the finished quilt, I really wanted to show you my binding, because luckily with the 6 packs of bandanas that I got, I had enough blue left over. Actually, I had enough of the pink left over too, that I made the binding out of it, and I just love the way it turned out. I think it adds a nice finishing touch. You can see I used a gray background for the quilt, but here's my blue bandana, the turquoise, and there's what it looks like. You can see, you get a little bit of that pattern, that paisley pattern in it. And I just want to quickly show you how I did that. And basically, out of 2 bandanas, this size quilt, this lap quilt, this is how much of the binding I had left. So I just had enough to get a nice binding around the quilt. But the way I did that, I used 2.5 inch strips for my binding. And so I took one of the bandanas. This one's already been cut. I was cutting it for an example for part of the video. And basically, you want to yet again cut off that little edge, that little sewn edge that is on all bandanas. And you're going to cut it off on 2 sides, or on one side, and you're just going to cut 2.5 inch strips. I mean, it's that simple. I do not cut these on the bias because they would have had some really short pieces in there. This just makes it easier. I just cut it like so. Get my rotary cutter. And that is it. And out of each bandana, for 2 of them, I was able to get 8 strips that were 2.5 inches. And then I was ready to, I folded them over, sort of like you would just do any other binding. Different people do binding different ways, but that's the way I do it. And I, of course, sewed them all together on the diagonal. Maybe you could see that here on the blue one. Let's see. Yep, you sort of can here. There's how I sewed it together. So folded it up and then sewed it on the front, and then hand sewed it on the back of the quilt, just like you would normally do any other binding. But that's how much I got out of two bandanas. Those were two 22-inch bandanas. I was able to get enough binding for the whole lap quilt. Hi, I'm back, and I'm here with my finished bandana quilt. I hope you like it as much as I do. I'm absolutely in love with this quilt. I'm so happy with the way it turned out. If you want to make your own bandana quilt, you can get the free pattern on my website, www.createwithclaudia.com. But all of the information is pretty much the same as it is on the video, but there is a downloadable pattern that you can get. And I'd also like to thank burlapfabric.com for providing me with the gorgeous bandanas for this project. As always, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I love new subscribers. Thank you so much. And I am on social media at Create with Claudia, where I post all sorts of fun things every day, or try to at least every day. Projects that I'm working on, sneak peeks of upcoming patterns, that sort of thing. So thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.